Hey everyone, this is Turd Flinging Monkey. Today I'm going to talk about love and hypergamy. Now this is a topic that's been covered by many MGTOW for many years, but I hope to bring something new to the table by talking about the science behind love and hypergamy. Now while the study of love is nothing new, in fact nothing I say on this subject is going to be controversial, it's going to be completely substantiated by the existing science. However, hypergamy is somewhat of a new area. It's an area that science doesn't want to necessarily get in because of gynocentrism and political correctness. So I'm going to make some educated inferences based on the science available when we get to that point. But before that, let's talk about love itself. Now, as Rick Sanchez points out, love is just a chemical reaction that compels animals to breed. But what are those chemicals specifically? How do they interact? And more importantly, how does male love differ from female love? Because that's going to give us the basis of where hypergamy comes from. Now this video came as a response to a comment I received on my channel, and it reads, quote, "I have a few questions about female hypergamy. This hasn't been asked in the MGTOW community, I believe, not that I know of anyway. Is hypergamy greatly suppressed in asexual girls/women, thus making them more capable of loving their partner for what he is, rather than what services he can provide? Or do they function by the same pattern as sexual women, minus providing sex to the partner? Thanks in advance and keep up the amazing work." Now the short answer I gave to that comment was that both love and hypergamy are related to the reproductive instincts. Thus by eliminating one, you eliminate both. But it is in this video that I'm going to elaborate on exactly why that is. So the first source I'm going to reference is called YourAmazingBrain.org. Now this is hardly scientific, it's not academic literature or anything, but it gives a general overview of the different stages of love. And it's in these stages that we learn about the chemicals associated with each stage. For example, stage 1 is defined as lust, and it's primarily driven by testosterone in men and estrogen in women. It's strictly a sexual instinct. Stage 2 attraction builds on that, but also adds additional chemicals, such as adrenaline, dopamine, and serotonin. This is known as puppy love, young love, falling in love, romantic love, all that stuff. This is the love that romantic comedies and female romance novels are based on. And the last stage of love is called attachment, and it's primarily driven by the chemicals oxytocin and vasopressin. Moving on to another source, called Hormone, Sex, and Personality Type by Dario Nardi, originally published in the Bulletin of Psychological Type, Volume 26, Number 4 in 2003, we learn a lot more about these chemicals and more importantly, how they interact with one another. In fact, I'm going to be quoting directly from this resource because this really lays the bedrock for the rest of my video. In regard to testosterone, it reads, quote, "Men produce 10 times more testosterone than women, so even low testosterone men have more than any woman. Physically, it generates male traits such as body hair and baldness. Psychologically, testosterone promotes a sense of separateness, aggression and risk-taking, sex drive but not touch affection, and sexual fantasy, anxiety or energy leading to poor concentration, assertiveness and self-confidence, visual, spatial ability and interest in moving things, violent criminal or psychotic behavior." In regard to estrogen, it reads, quote, "Estrogen is a female hormone that cycles monthly. Women have much more estrogen than men, so even low estrogen women have more than any man. Physically, estrogen generates female traits such as breasts and larger hips. Natural estrogen prevents many degenerative diseases. When it peaks, estrogen improves sleep, skin, odor, memory, and sensory acuity. Psychologically, estrogen promotes a stable mood and sense of well-being, feminine sexual behavior, neuron growth, and improved cognition." Alright, now moving on to vasopressin and oxytocin. This is really important. In regards to vasopressin, it reads, quote, "Vasopressin is made in the brain. Both men and women make it. However, the male hormone testosterone synergizes with vasopressin. The two greatly enhance each other. A woman and man might have equal levels of vasopressin, but the man expresses stronger effects. Physically, vasopressin causes water retention and high blood pressure. High levels may increase forehead size. Personality-wise, vasopressin influences male social and sexual behavior, public communication, and paternal behavior. In animals, mammals, it promotes aggression, territorial competition and dominance with other males. It bonds males to mates and children. For men, it promotes higher partner recognition, sexual arousal, courtship behavior, monogamy, pair bonding, and mate guarding. Vasopressin also improves cognitive ability by enhancing memory. It allows one to feel separate, with dampened emotional responses and more sensible or reasonable behavior. Depressed people also have higher vasopressin. In regards to oxytocin, it reads, quote, "Oxytocin is made in the brain. Both women and men make it, however the female hormone estrogen synergizes with oxytocin. The two greatly enhance each other. A man and woman might have equal levels of oxytocin, but the woman experiences stronger effects. Oxytocin facilitates childbirth and nursing for women. In both sexes, it increases by 5-fold during sex. In men, however, it immediately drops and vasopressin rises sharply right afterwards," explaining why men generally feel a sudden sense of separateness. Personality-wise, oxytocin promotes touching, affection, and bonding. In both men and women, it rises instantly with a single touch. Oxytocin also influences female social behavior. It promotes nesting, monogamy, and pair bonding. The nurturing, acceptance, and protection of offspring, and pup retrieval in animals. It influences mate selection. Many of these effects are confirmed in humans as well as animals. For all of its positive effects, high oxytocin inhibits cognitive ability by impairing learning and memory. It encourages emotional extremes, but it also prevents depression. Alright, so now we have the basis for male versus female love. At the end of the day, both men and women produce oxytocin and vasopressin, which is the latter attachment stage of love. However, because vasopressin synergizes with testosterone, and oxytocin synergizes with estrogen, men and women are going to experience love vastly differently, thus giving rise to male love and female love, which is what I've talked about in several of my videos like She'll Never Love You. It's not that women don't experience love, oxytocin and vasopressin, it's that it synergizes with their estrogen differently than the vasopressin synergizes with a man's testosterone, which gives rise to vastly different behaviors. Vasopressin has also been linked to aggression, especially in males. This goes hand in hand with my hypothesis that dominance is the male equivalent behavior of hypergamy. But in order to explain that, we need to back up and talk about male versus female reproductive success. And again, this all goes back to sexual reproduction. Men produce a lot of sperm. A lot of sperm. They can impregnate as many women as they have sexual access to at the same time. If a man has access to 30 different women and they all ovulate at different days of the month, and he has sex with each one on the day that they're ovulating during that month, he will impregnate all 30 women. And as far as gene replication and sexual success are concerned, the man has won. He has reproduced his genes 30 times in 1 month. But it doesn't work that way for women. If a woman has sex with 30 different men, one for each day of the month, she will only be impregnated by the man who first had sex with her when she became fertile, whatever day of the month that fell on. This means that women have to be more selective about who they have sex with, particularly when they're fertile, because they want to achieve the best genetic outcomes. They want to ensure that their offspring are healthy and have the best chance at success. Another source I'm going to cite is called Brain, Sex in Men and Women from Arousal to Orgasm. And in the subsection called Context is Key, it reads, quote, "Recently, when comparing men and women's response to erotic videos that either set the mood, having an emotional component and story, or physically set the scene, where sexual intercourse and genitalia were directly displayed, women's responses were stronger for the mood-type videos, whereas the men preferred the physical-type videos. Research also indicates that women have a more profound temporal component to sexual arousal than men. Although poorly understood, the least sexually aroused time is considered the follicular phase, a potentially fertile period, enabling females to be selective and cautious when committing to a sexual encounter in this period," unquote. And this also goes along with other observations that when women are fertile, they tend to dress up more. They tend to go out and try to attract the best man. They are more selective when they are fertile. And this is completely subconscious. They're not aware of this. They're not like, oh, I'm fertile, I'm going to get really dolled up, and I'm only going to sleep with a really hot guy. They don't think like that. It's all subconscious. This is all based on their instincts. But the reason why I bring this up is because women have to be more selective. A man can just spread his sperm around. He really doesn't care. But a woman has to be far more selective about who she reproduces with. If she selects the wrong guy, it can really hurt her offspring's chances. And this is the basis of hypergamy. A man doesn't have a hypergamous instinct. He doesn't really care about trading a mate in for a better mate. It really doesn't matter to him. Women treat men more or less like cars. They get a good car, they run it into the ground, and then they trade it in for a better car, if they can. If they're stuck with the shitty car, they're stuck with the shitty car. But in their perfect world, they would be able to trade their car in for a better car whenever they needed to. To a man, women are like Pokemon. You just want to catch them all. You're not interested in trading them in, but you may not have the same affection and bonding towards one woman or another, just like in Pokemon. Sometimes you catch a Pokemon and you just send it to the nursery. You don't really give a shit, it doesn't join your team, you're not interested in training it, you're just trying to get that check off the Pokédex. When it comes to women, sometimes you just want to bang a chick. You're not interested in any sort of long-term romantic relationship, you're just trying to get that check mark. Now, men do quote-unquote trade their spouses in a monogamous society where monogamy is enforced. Where you have marriage and legal contracts, the man just can't take a lover, so he has to divorce his wife, but that literally is a social construct. For as much as feminism bitches about the differences in the sexes being social constructs, which is clearly retarded, there actually are things which are social constructs. In a natural state, without the government and marriage and legal contracts, men would be polygamous. There wouldn't be enforced monogamy. There wouldn't be a reason for a man to trade in his partner for a new partner. He would just add a new partner to his harem. And you can tell this is how we evolved because of the way vasopressin increases aggression between males in males. When a man bonds with a woman through sex, he gains a sense of possessiveness over the women he's bonding with. And this is where dominance and hypergamy go hand in hand. The woman wants to ensure that she's reproducing with the strongest, fittest males. And the man demonstrates that he is the strongest and fittest male by dominating other males, by dominating his territory, by establishing that he is the biggest and strongest male. And then he attracts the women. Plural. He attracts women. He doesn't attract one woman, he attracts all the women. And this is why in most animals where there is sexual dimorphism, where the male is the bigger and stronger sex, you see males having large harems of females, and having aggressive dominance towards other males. This is a win-lose scenario. The man who wins gets all the women. The man who loses doesn't get any women. His genetic legacy ends. And these instincts have not gone away. For as much as we've created institutions like marriage and religion to try to suppress these, they haven't changed. Notice that some animals do bond for life. They are effectively monogamous. And they do so without government or religion. But humans require these institutions in order to suppress our natural instincts, which are not to do these things. Hypergamy is the female's desire to reproduce with only the strongest and fittest males. And dominance is the male's instinct in order to become the strongest and fittest male. And vasopressin synergizes with testosterone in males. And even though both sexes experience spikes in oxytocin and vasopressin, it is vasopressin which synergizes with testosterone, and it is oxytocin which synergizes with estrogen, thus leading to the different ways that both men and women experience and communicate what we call love. Now, we've talked a lot about the bonding stage of love, the latter stage of love. But what about falling in love? What about that dopamine, serotonin, adrenaline, estrogen, testosterone kind of love? Well, that kind of love is almost purely sexual. Have you ever talked to a woman who just friend-zoned you and said there was no chemistry? Or have you ever had a girl cheat on you or dump you and say that she just fell out of love with you or whatever? In all of those cases, what's happening is she fell in love, quote unquote, with someone else. She's no longer sexually attracted to you, she's now sexually attracted to this guy. And you see this all the time in media that is marketed towards women. Like, look at all these romantic comedies where the woman starts out in a relationship with a decent, stable guy, but then she meets the one. And then she has a relationship with him and she falls in love with him. And of course the guy she's cheating on is totally cool with it. He just wants her to be happy and follow her heart. I mean, it's female fantasy, what are you gonna do? But the point is, women eat this shit up with a spoon. They love this idea of falling in love, love at first sight. All of this is related to sex. It is completely 100% sexual. A woman is not attracted when it comes to falling in love, the dopamine, the serotonin, all that stuff. That has nothing to do with oxytocin and vasopressin. It is completely sexual. When women talk about chemistry and falling in love and all this other shit, they're talking about guys they want to fuck. Guys they want to have babies with. Now, women are paradoxically attracted to resources. They are physically attracted to men with resources. This is why celebrities can just fuck women and not even have to pay them. You would think if they were logical, if a man had a lot of money, like he was a celebrity or something like that the woman would try to get him to buy her gifts in order to have sex with him, to try to get some of those resources. And that these women will just have sex with these guys. No money will change hands. They'll just be happy to have sex with a guy who has a lot of money. They are physically attracted to the money itself. It doesn't make sense to a man, but that's because we have completely different instincts. But a woman is physically attractive. She falls in love with resources as much as the guy's looks and appearance and physicality. This is why women are all attracted to the same 20% of men, according to the 80-20 rule. The bottom 80% of men, women will settle for if they can't get the 20%, but women are all attracted to the same 20%. And the characteristics of this 20% is they are the total package. They're good looking, confident, and financially successful. These are your celebrities, your powerful men, business leaders, and so on and so forth. Now they will settle for a rich guy who doesn't really look that good, and on the side they'll fuck a poor guy who's a model, but ideally they want the best of both worlds. And just to get political for a moment, this whole controversy about Donald Trump grabbing women by the pussy because he's a celebrity billionaire is completely validated. If you are a celebrity billionaire, women will let you grab them by the pussy. They will literally let you grab them by the pussy because you're a celebrity billionaire. You are in the top 20%. People are only feigning outrage because it's Donald Trump. If Bill Clinton said that exact same thing in that exact same context, nobody would care. And as you see with the popularity and success of things like the 50 Shades of Grey franchise, women will let a celebrity billionaire do a lot more than grab them by the pussy. Anyway, getting back on topic. So a man and a woman meet. The woman and the man are sexually attracted to each other. Without that sexual attraction, no relationship takes place. This is why it's nearly impossible for a guy to get out of the friend zone. And even if he does, even if he waits until she's hit the wall, and she finally gives this guy the time of day that she's been giving the cold shoulder to for years, she finally gets with him. So he's happy, he finally gets the girl he's wanted for years after she's had a mile of dick run through her. She will not be happy with him. In fact, Sexy MGTOW did this video, I can't remember, Real Women Married Edition, where it shows these posts of these women on these forums, basically admitting that they cheat on their husband, who's a good guy. They're just not attracted to him. They married him because he had resources, he was a good provider, but they're not attracted to him, so they fuck other dudes on the side. Without that sexual attraction, there is no basis for a relationship. So if you are an ugly guy trying to attract women with money, you will attract them into a marriage, but they will cuck you. They will cheat on you, and they will divorce you and take your money. So you're really not winning. Honestly, you'd be better off just getting a call girl. A lot more honest and a lot less risk. You just have to put the illusion of love out of your mind. But that's really all it is an illusion. Anyway, sorry. So the man and the woman meet, there's a sexual attraction, testosterone and estrogen, dopamine, serotonin, adrenaline, all that good stuff. Now it's important to note there's one final component to this, which is the amygdala. Returning to the article, Brain, Sex in Men and Women from Arousal to Orgasm, in the subsection Emotional Component it reads regarding the amygdala, quote, "The amygdala is involved in evaluating the emotional context of a sexual situation, which, along with the VMPFC, helps to control sensory processing and attention. This emotional processing of the amygdala is well connected to motivational areas of the brain, therefore guiding sexual behavior. On the other hand, in experiments involving manual physical arousal or during orgasm, deactivation of the amygdala was found. Interestingly, similar deactivations are thought to contribute to hypersexuality and indiscriminate sexual behavior in individuals with Kolvar and Bucy syndrome. The emotional component is not considered strictly emotional as such, as it involves the more physical feelings of pleasure that one experiences the more turned on one becomes," unquote. So it's the amygdala that restricts sexual behavior, by instilling a sense of fear into the person about to have sex. Now during sex, the amygdala shuts down. And those whose amygdala isn't functioning correctly are hypersexual. They're basically complete sluts. In fact, in another article called The Fearless SM, Woman Missing Amygdala, there's a woman whose amygdala shut down because of brain damage, and she cannot experience fear. They tried to scare her, and she just didn't give a shit. She has absolutely no fear. Now, according to the previous article, she's also very hypersexual. It doesn't go into that in this article, probably because it wasn't related to what they were talking about. But my hypothesis, which I don't have the resources or the time to actually do a proper test, but it seems that the amygdala is very important in regulating sexual behavior. The amygdala is tied to sexual selection in females. And this is related directly to hypergamy. If she doesn't have the amygdala, there's nothing to regulate that behavior. She'll just fuck anybody. Now, whether or not that leads to good social outcomes is a completely different story. But if we're talking about actually getting rid of hypergamy, which is primarily related to the woman's fear that she might reproduce with a suboptimal mate, as demonstrated in my video, She'll Never Love You Confirmed. If this amygdala response is suppressed or eliminated, then women would no longer be hypergamous. But they also would not be monogamous. They would be extremely promiscuous. So at the end of the day, men don't really have any good options. I mean, it's always been that way, it's always going to be that way. Because of the different hormones involved, vasopressin plus testosterone in men, oxytocin plus estrogen in women, men are much more possessive and much more aggressive when it comes to their mates. Women aren't. They're not that protective. And because they have to be more selective about who they mate with, hypergamy is always going to be a thing. The only way to eliminate that is to eliminate the amygdala, which is going to make women hypersexual. So they're just going to have sex with everybody. Now that may be good for the undesirable man because there's still that chance that he might be that guy who catches her when she's fertile and reproduces. But the question then becomes, if women are hypersexual, if they can't be monogamous with one partner, and men, because of vasopressin and testosterone, are very territorial and are very aggressive in protecting their partner, what sort of society would that lead to? Would not men seek to control their women to keep them from being hypersexual with other men? Would it not lead to even more fighting between men, as women just went off and cheated and had affairs with as many men as they had access to? When you understand human nature, when you understand the chemicals and all the different reactions and how love and hypergamy work, you realize that hypergamy really isn't the problem. Hypergamy has always existed and it will always exist, and it actually serves a very important function. Without hypergamy, we would not have evolved to be at the top of the food chain that we are now. If women just reproduce with whoever, without taking into consideration whether they were desirable or the most desirable or not, then the offspring would have suffered. They wouldn't have the most desirable genes. They may not have survived. Humanity may have gone extinct millennia ago. As I've said several times, women aren't the problem. The problem with modern relationships isn't because of hypergamy. Hypergamy's always existed. It's the system. It's the gynocentric society which is the problem. Because in the last several decades, women have been freed and liberated from everything that constrained their hypergamy in the past, thus allowing them to do whatever they want regardless of the consequences, because there aren't any as far as the woman is concerned. There are consequences for men, there are consequences for society, but there aren't any consequences for women. And that's the problem. So the purpose of this video is to help you understand why human nature is the way it is, why female love differs from male love, how hypergamy works, and that it isn't the root cause of the problem. And in seeking to eliminate hypergamy, you actually probably do more harm than good. Women would simply become hypersexual and men would become much more violent and dominant of each other in order to contain these hypersexual women. Because you can't just have women fucking everybody, because then you don't know whose kids are whose. It wouldn't work. I mean, talk to someone who's dated someone who's hypersexual. It's great for a while, but there's no basis for a lasting relationship. And guys, just on a fundamental, physiological, instinctual level, do not like being cheated on. It just ties right into the dominance instinct. They don't like other guys plowing their field, to use a very obvious metaphor. But anyway, this is Turd Flinging Monkey. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.